Hello and welcome to the Book Show on Diversity TV. I'm Ava Colaby, a writer of fiction, nonfiction, and poetry. My Facebook and website are Ava Colaby Books. We're here in rural Arkansas in the United States in a pleasant farmhouse, and I am going to talk about the book Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind by Yuval Noah Harari. I recently found a copy of this in the public library of a nearby town called Horseshoe Bend, which I was quite surprised to find. I read this book about 2 years ago on my Dublin bus commutes into and out of work. Why was this such a surprising find in the local library? Because, in case you're not aware, in my country, the South is generally known for being more traditional and more religious. And this is a book that challenges a lot of beliefs and really gets you to basically forces you out of your comfort zone, so you have to think critically about everything, which I like as a challenge. I very much enjoy reading it. I found it captivating and challenging read because the writer challenges you on your perception of everything, every belief you have, but not in an aggressive way. It's just very interesting and very engaging. The writer goes over the entire history of human civilization, and he challenges us to rethink our beliefs about religion and politics and concepts like communism, which he says is largely a replacement for religion in a secular society, but it basically does the same thing of creating an order that everybody follows. So in a way, he's saying that people that claim they're not religious are in a way religious or more religious than others, more religious than they think they are, which is another challenging thing to get into. When people think they have freed themselves of the old ways, they may not have. So the local library does have a lot more traditional books in it, but they do have some that will surprise you. And it was very interesting to me to see because people need to think critically and form their own opinions. And I think libraries are a part of making that possible. They are definitely part of keeping your public educated. So I was very glad to see that some of the librarians here would agree with that they want you to think critically about things and form your own opinions. So what I really enjoyed about this book is that nearly every page challenges you to stretch your mind and to not take how you were raised, the beliefs you were raised with, for granted and think that's the only way of looking at things, and to think that that's absolute fact just because maybe this whole time you have thought that it was. He's very good about this in this book, and he also discusses the difference between human perception and reality. What people think is or is not reality. I think the author seems to be an atheist. This doesn't bother me personally. I have friends who are believers, friends who are atheists, friends who are in between. One dear friend who's a Muslim, a liberal Muslim. I didn't even know that she was when I met her, actually, because she doesn't wear the hijab. It came up when we were at this barbecue, and she was having to ask if any of the meat was pig meat. And then I realized, oh, she must be a Muslim. All I knew about her was she was a good teacher, a dedicated teacher, and a good friend, very loyal. So anyway, I believe in the Christian concept of being neighborly anyway, so I'll be neighborly to anyone as long as you're neighborly to me. So if you believe that there is a God and that there is a plan for everyone, it could be that somebody like this writer has a purpose to get us to challenge our beliefs. Unchallenged beliefs are not true beliefs. If you are a believer, reading a book like this or Transformations in Myth Through Time by Joseph Campbell, a favorite of my dad's, partly because I think he felt naughty reading it after his Catholic upbringing. If you don't challenge these beliefs, if they go unchallenged, then it's really untested faith, which is not really faith at all. And it's blind obedience to something someone else wrote down and translated and retranslated over centuries of time. I often challenge my family's 11-year-old that I'm helping to raise to think more critically. She loves going to her Baptist church, and I have no issue with that in and of itself, going to a Baptist church. But I'm always challenging her to make sure she's thinking critically and not just letting people brainwash her, particularly for their own personal gain, since there are those Sunday Christians that get involved in the church only for their own self-serving purposes and not for why she wants to go there, which is that she actually feels spirituality and feels a connection to God. I always want to make sure that she's thinking critically. And this is an excellent book for being in that line of thinking, that to achieve one's full potential and to avoid being taken advantage of by unscrupulous individuals, you need to think critically and form your own opinions. On that note, I will read an excerpt from this book that is about human perception versus reality. Because again, it's good to challenge yourself and make yourself have to think about these things. So he says, an objective phenomenon exists independently of consciousness and human beliefs. Radioactivity, for example, is not a myth. Radioactive emissions occurred long before people discovered them, and they are dangerous even when people do not believe in them. Marie Curie, one of the discoverers of radioactivity, did not know during her long years of studying radioactive materials that they could harm her body. While she did not believe that radioactivity could kill her, she nevertheless died of aplastic anemia, a disease caused by overexposure to radioactive materials. The subjective is something that exists depending on the consciousness of beliefs of a single individual. It disappears or changes if that particular individual changes his or her beliefs. Many a child believes in the existence of an imaginary friend who is invisible and inaudible to the rest of the world. The imaginary friend exists solely in the child's subjective consciousness, and when the child grows up and ceases to believe in it, the imaginary friend fades away. The intersubjective is something that exists within the communication network linking the subjective consciousness of many individuals. If a single individual changes his or her beliefs or even dies, it is of little importance. However, if most individuals in the network die or change their beliefs, the intersubjective phenomenon will mutate or disappear. Intersubjective phenomenon are neither malevolent frauds nor insignificant charades. They exist in a different way from physical phenomena such as radioactivity, but their impact on the world may still be enormous. Many of history's most important drivers are subjective: law, money, gods, nations. Peugeot is not the imaginary friend of Peugeot's CEO. The company exists in the shared imagination of millions of people. The CEO believes in the company's existence because the board of directors also believes in it, as do the company's lawyers, the secretaries in the nearby office, the tellers in the bank, the brokers on the stock exchange, and car dealers from France to Australia. If the CEO alone were to suddenly stop believing in Peugeot's existence, he'd quickly land himself in the nearest mental hospital and someone else would occupy his office. So this is a part of how he converses about his different ways of challenging all these different beliefs that we take for granted. He makes a good point there about how money is so subjective. We say this thing has value. And before, when money was backed up by gold, it was the same thing. We were saying, well, this has value because we say it has value. So it is a great way to challenge yourself and think critically, regardless of what your beliefs ultimately are. That is my recommendation this time around. Thank you for watching the Book Show on Diversity TV, and we will see you next time.